You got a big ogre on TV talking about what Draymond say ain't the gospel. It is the gospel. What I say is the gospel. And, when you say that multiple times, like on several different segments, you must think what I say the gospel.
I don't think the game's over.
Welcome into Triple Zero's The Anti-Hot Take Sports Show. I'm your host, Josh Buckhalter. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, and the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. That was one Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors clapping back at Kendrick Perkins, who also clapped back at the clapback. And it's just back and forth. It's really entertaining. Not really much to gain from it, but it is entertaining to hear the two of them go back and forth verbally in the War of Words. But before we get into that, we have to talk about the games that are coming on, in about 30 minutes or so, because, I'm trying to get back to the original recording day so we could drop these on the regularly scheduled timing. And so with that pushes us now to 30 minutes before tip-off in the two Game 7s that we have in the Eastern and Western Conference. And so with that, the Golden State Warriors and the Miami Heat have both moved on to the conference finals, with the Miami Heat taking out the Philadelphia 76ers in 6 games and the Golden State Warriors taking out the Memphis Grizzlies in similar fashion. And so now we move on to the Dallas Mavericks taking on the Phoenix Suns in did I say Phoenix Suns moved on? No, Golden State. Okay, anyway, Dallas Mavericks taking on the Phoenix Suns in a Game 7 later on Sunday. But first off, they have the Milwaukee Bucks taking on the Boston Celtics in Game 7. And I got to be honest with you. Giannis has been doing his thing, 35 points per game, 28 points per game against the Bulls, my Bulls in the first round. But they've made him work for it, Boston has. And so there's a lot of him, kind of just chipping away, but there's not really much else happening around him. And I think that's part of the plan. I think maybe the key for him might be trying to trust the guys a little bit more, at least early on, to see if they can give him something to help them get over the hump here in this game, because Boston is playing great basketball. Jayson Tatum, 48 points, I believe he had. Giannis had 44, something like that, 44, 48, 46 to 44, something along those lines for the two of those guys, and just an incredible Game 6. And so now you have them taking on each other in Game 7, and my whole thought process this entire time has been that you are looking at the Celtics as a better team, but Giannis is still the best player. And usually in a 7-game series, the best player is what comes out on top. I don't know if that's going to be the case with Boston. I know that Boston has a tendency to kind of get beyond themselves, but they are playing such a connected form of brand of basketball. Let me put it that way. A connected brand of basketball that I'm not sure we're seeing from the Bucks at this point. Now, the Bucks are the champs, so I can't fully change my prediction. I'm going to stick with Bucks in this Game 7. But I'm not confident because of what I've seen from how Boston is making Giannis work while limiting the opportunities for everybody else on the outside, and really to make it much of an impact on the game. So we'll see what happens. And so, again, wouldn't be surprised to see the Bucks win. I'm kind of leaning towards the Celtics, but because I chose the Bucks, I'm going to stick with Bucks in Game 7. I'm not very confident whatsoever. Later on today, though, you have the Dallas Mavericks taking on the Phoenix Suns, and in that one, I'm pretty confident in saying that Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks are going to come out on top. Again, this could be completely wrong because the Suns are the team that's been there and done that. Doncic has had a tendency to revert to a form of basketball that doesn't necessarily lead itself to winning, but I'm not sure we're going to see that from him now because he's kind of been challenged in a sense by the likes of Devin Booker and his kind of talking that you've gotten from the fans, and I don't know if Phoenix is really built like that. I know that Dallas has the physicality ready for defensively for under Jason Kidd. I'm not sure that we've seen that from Phoenix, though, in this series, and that is, to me, the biggest concern for them as they try to lock down their Game 7. So I chose Phoenix in that one. I'm going to stick with my picks. I'm taking with both picks, but I'm not confident in either one. Let me put it that way. I would not be surprised at all to see it be Boston and Dallas moving on, but I'm going to stick with Bucks and Suns because that was where I was at to start this whole thing. I will say this. Secretly, inside, deep down inside, I have two finals that I want to see. One or the other. It's either I want to see Luka and Dallas take on Giannis and the Bucks, or I want to see Jimmy Butler's Heat taking on Chris Paul's Suns. And the first one is because that's just two supreme talents going back and forth. The other one, the Suns versus the Heat, is because of the marketing. I just want to see all the type of temperature jokes that they're going to write with all that cheesy marketing. You just know it's going to be really, really bad for all games. And I expect that one to probably go a good 7 games because those are two teams that'll do some nipping and tucking. But that's what I want to see. If I had my druthers, if I had my choice of it, it would be between the Suns and the Heat or between the Mavericks and the Bucks. Now watch, we're going to get like Celtics and Warriors or something like that. Whatever the case may be. That's what I want to see. Suns, Heat, Bucks, Mavs. I'm not sure. I think for basketball purposes, I want to see Bucks, Mavs more than I want to see Suns, Heat. But the media person in me wants to see Suns, Heat. Period. Yeah. So. Zach LaVine, Chicago Bulls. So as we get to the local stuff, I tried to lead with that last time, but because we have playoff games starting soon, then I wanted to get Zach LaVine, or wanted to get to that first. Zach LaVine of the Bulls, though, is going to be a hot item this summer. I know that we in Chicago like to believe that it's a done deal. They can't offer more money than us. There's not, there's ties elsewhere, but they have troubles. They have to work to get that money available, and he has to want to go there. There's so many teams that I just don't know, and what we've heard from him and how he spoke in his exit interview, I'm not sure that we can just completely close the door on a Zach LaVine exit. And more than anything, I think we need to stop balking at some of these packages because of the outlook that it would provide the Bulls going forward. I saw one, and it wasn't really a suggestion as much as it led me to a suggestion. Bobby Marks, and I wrote about this for Heavy.com. Bobby Marks of ESPN was a guest on the Low Post podcast, and he floated Zach LaVine's name out there in connection with the Philadelphia 76ers. And I didn't even think, that has not been a connection that's been thrown out very often. But I could see Philly wanting to do it. And the package that the Bulls could get back from Philadelphia of Tobias Harris, which I know is a hot button issue for a lot of people in basketball circles, but he played better this year, especially on the defensive end, particularly rather on the defensive end. And then the Bulls, if I'm the Bulls, and that's a route that LaVine obviously would have to want to take because he's a free agent, and the Sixers wanted to try to make work, I'm asking for Tobias Harris on top of Tyrese Maxey and some draft capital. That's not a bad haul. That might be the best haul that I've seen in these signing trades. We had one where they were suggesting that a doomsday scenario where the Bulls traded LaVine for Russell Westbrook. I would much rather have a Tobias Harris package than a Russell Westbrook, a package centered around Tobias Harris than one centered around Russell Westbrook at this point in their careers. But it's not. I don't think I want either. Let me put that out there. You want Zach back, but if he's going to leave and that's where he chose to go, then so be it. As I wrote, though, for that article, it's less likely to go this way than most others because there don't seem to be many connections. The Bulls did steal Mark Eversley, general manager Mark Eversley, from the Philadelphia 76ers, and Billy Donovan was a candidate for their head coaching position before Doc Rivers accepted it. So it would be kind of a turnabout, it's fair play sort of deal. But I just don't, there's not the connections there for LaVine. There's been to San Antonio, to Los Angeles, to Portland. And the best thing, though, what they do have is Joel Embiid. And while those other places have stars, I'm not sure that there's not one place that has a star quite of Joel Embiid, MVP finalist caliber on their roster. So don't immediately write it off, even if it is less likely than others. And then you have one of the funnier back and forth, like I led off the show with here, Draymond Green and Kendrick Perkins getting into a back and forth. And Perkins was critical of Draymond Green as the Warriors were dealing with the Memphis Grizzlies without Ja Morant and having a tough time doing so. They finally pulled away and blew him out in the final game, Game 6. But Perk has some big things to say about Draymond. Draymond, of course, did not respond or did not take very lightly to it. And so he took to the airwaves to let Perk know how he felt about what he said.
Something came to my phone earlier. A guy saying I'm scared to shoot the basketball. Like, scared and me in the same senses is like brutal, But you got a big ogre on TV talking about what Draymond say ain't the gospel. It is the gospel. What I say is the gospel. And, when you say that multiple times, like on several different segments, you must think what I say the gospel. So, you got to come out and shut some guys up sometimes. And I like to show, when you got people out there just talking out the side of their neck, or anybody can make the pass Draymond make. Like, that's just stupid. I mean, like, these are people who get employed to talk on TV about our game. And, you know, it's anybody can make that pass. You make that pass. We would love to see it. I played against the guy, by the way. I'm talking about Kendrick Perkins, for those of y'all that don't know. I'm never ducking no smoke. As the Memphis Grizzlies towels say, I don't duck smoke. Like, anybody can make that pass. Like, you couldn't. So, good luck. So, you know, you just got to come out and shut people up sometimes. And it was very fun to do.
My favorite part about that clip is Draymond's son when he said scared. He looked at him like, you ain't scared? Shorty, no. That's the best part of the entire video. Listen, Big Ogre, he was talking about Kendrick Perkins, and the comment about talking about our game is funny in the context of he's speaking of a former player who was commenting on their game. But he did acknowledge that he played against Perkins. Perkins has often been attacked for his lack of, we'll say, skill in the game, relying rather on size and force. That's fine. He did what he did. He made a career out of it, champion. It is funny. Perkins did clap back at Draymond, did not let that just go by unnoticed, and had some very he took it in a very interesting direction himself.
Hey, Draymond, ogre, whatever what you call me? Hey, listen, man, you ain't handsome. You damn sure ain't cute. Man, I've been having a dime piece on my side. My wife been on my side since the 10th grade, before the NBA logo. Before Jerry West was on my socks, I've been had mine. You know what I'm saying? That's neither here or there, but at the end of the day, man, look, I ain't none of these other cats, man. I'm going to say what I want to say. And at the end of the day, man, like I said, you wasn't being aggressive like the Draymond of old. Yeah, you did your thing tonight, but thinking I'm going to be quiet or thinking, man, look, you got the wrong one. I ain't gonna shut up for nobody, man. Look, I ain't born none of that. Remember that. So at the end of the day, man, my whole message to you is, man, you ain't handsome. You ugly. You ain't handsome. Don't be getting on there thinking you cute because you got the NBA logo on your sock and on your jersey. Carry on.
Okay, so now we got two great things out of this back and forth. You got Draymond's son looking around like, you ain't scared? And then you got, since before Jerry West was on my socks. Yo, that is good stuff, okay? I don't know why we went to talking about handsome and all that because he called him an ogre. Okay, whatever. Like, that had nothing to do with basketball. It is funny. Since before I had Jerry West on my socks. That's good stuff, man. That's classic. Listen, I will say this. Draymond Green is a guy that is a ultimate glue guy, right? You probably don't want him running your team like as the centerpiece, but you definitely need him to connect the centerpieces to the rest of the team. And I think that that's maybe something that gets lost a lot in the conversation about him. He gets talked about like a superstar because his impact can often rise to that level, even if he himself is not a superstar player in most eyes. But Perkins is not inaccurate in saying that he has not been aggressive like the Draymond of old. He's not the Draymond of old. So, I mean, you know, and we saw what he did, him and Jokic battling back and forth and stuff like that. But to say, I just love the since before Jerry West was on my socks. These guys are both in the NBA, have both been in the NBA rather. So they're obviously top at their craft. Like I say all the time, when you call an NBA player, professional athlete, a scrub, it's relative. It's literally relative because they're cooking most of the people who are calling them that. No lies told. This, though, is an interesting one because Perkins is a guy who, similar to Draymond, his impact wasn't always shown in the box score. It's not the same because Draymond has a lot more offensive responsibility, but it's a very similar type of deal in that what you see in the numbers might not necessarily be what you're getting on the court. And I just think that's a really funny back and forth for these two dudes who are really similar in their hot takes and their approach to how they deliver their message. But, you know, we often battle ourselves more than anybody else. Switching gears. The Chicago Bears added a lot of bodies to the wide receiver room in the past couple of weeks. They added Tajay Sharp, and they also added Dante Pettis, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers and New York Giants. That's just repetitive. Sharp was of the Falcons, Tennessee Titans, and the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I talked about it last week, and the Bears having issues with shaking perceptions about their franchise. And one of them has been about they're not doing enough to help Justin Fields. And I broke it down a bit in the article for Last Word in Pro Football, and I'll be doing a little bit more as I go through their schedule coming up this week. But adding bodies is a very good way to help Justin Fields, especially if you didn't have the capital to go get one of the ones that you wanted in the draft, and you don't want to pay too much for a veteran on the open market, one that's probably going to leave next year anyway. Adding bodies, guys who've had flashes in the past. Pettis was a guy who has flashed. Sharp was a guy who's flashed. Pringle was a guy who has not necessarily flashed, but has shown consistent development over his course of his career. And then you had offensive coordinator Luke Getsy talking about a guy in Equanimeous St. Brown who he knows very well from his time in Green Bay very highly. So they're adding upside. You had Velus Jones. And then we got Darnell Mooney, who did record 1,000 receiving yards last year in a crap system. I'm not ready to completely write off what they've done for Justin Fields, especially if the number one thing they've done for him is get him better coaching. Get him somebody that's actually going to help him develop instead of somebody who just wants him to do it his way. And if you can't do it my way, then you're SOL. So hopefully Getsy will get that out of him. Hopefully they will two of these buys hopefully will catch on for the Bears. If it's St. Brown and Pringle, so be it. If it's St. Brown and somebody else, fine. Don't forget about a young guy like Daz Newsome who could possibly stick around and make some noise in the summertime. So I know that there is a lot of consternation about what they have and have not done. But I don't think that we can completely write off a rebuild proper so fast just because they didn't do. Again, had they gone about this and started signing guys left and right, they said, oh, same old Bears overspending money when they're not ready to compete. It's a double-edged sword, lose-lose type of deal. Again, like I said, they have a long time or hard time shaking off these negative perceptions. They're going to until they start doing things the right way. This could be that step, though, and I'm not sold, but I also see the value in what this approach can be, especially when next year they will have a lot of cap space and they will have a higher draft pick in the first round. So it is what it is, man. It is what it is. I know that people want them to go out and make a lot of big moves, but like I said, if you did that, they're going to talk about them. Oh, the Bears are just, doing just like Ryan Pace. They're going to short-term fixes for long-term problems. They're going to be right back in the buyer's market once again when the next cycle rolls around. This seems to be a longer-standing approach. These are younger guys, prove it guys again that even if they do good this year, you can probably still get them at a discount on another year if they deem themselves worthy or if they are deemed worthy, because they will still have to prove it again. Like if that's how there's upside. There's a lot of upside. Again, and I think the biggest thing will be for Fields to get proper coaching, because let's not forget he didn't have Allen Robinson for a good chunk of the season last year, and Robinson was not a productive receiver for the Bears a good chunk of the year last year for whatever reason. You could talk about it being because of Matt Nagy's system and being in the doghouse, or because Robinson just wasn't there. 4 games he missed. He started 11, but there's been a void. I don't know. They haven't filled it with a number one. There's not a number one receiver on this team yet. I will say that. But you can get by with 2s and 3s until you can find a number one. Maybe that's the best way to summarize it. Frank Gore celebrated his 39th birthday with a knockout. He's turning professional boxing, though it seems to be the path for a lot of former professional athletes. But Gore did it the right way and got a knockout. Wasn't an important opponent. Just want to talk about Frank Gore getting knockouts, because whatever Frank Gore wants to do, Frank Gore's going to be successful at it. That's why he ran the ball until he was 38 years old in a young man's game. Frank Gore. Gotta love it. Jon Gruden versus Roger Goddell in the NFL is set to begin on May 25th. This is the court case that stems from Gruden being fired after the NFL went into thousands of emails from the Washington Commanders ownership group. And while we haven't seen anything really happen with them, Gruden was shown the axe because of his insensitive and bigoted emails sent back and forth between him and others. And I've often said, I talked about this with on the Hertel podcast. I'm not sure how Gruden goes down, but no one that he was responding to went down. And part of me at the time said that I felt like it was a not a setup, definitely not a setup, but it was kind of funny that Gruden was going down while nobody else is really being mentioned in connection with any of this stuff. And again, it started off as a problem for Washington. And yet you have Gruden on the other side of the country in another conference being the one that kind of went back and forth. And as Andrew Johnson told me at the time when we were going back and forth about this, he agreed. He said, yeah, it's kind of odd. And he thought there'd be more to come out of it, as I did. But it so far, it's been Gruden. And, I guess that is what it is. Jameis Winston. This is a great thing. This is Jameis Winston. If you don't know, I'm a Florida State fan, right? Has not been beautiful, has not been pretty, has been downright ugly for the Florida State Seminoles in football over the past few years. Jameis Winston, though, is one of my guys. Squints Winston since he was in college. Eat a W, all of that stuff. Still in lobster crab legs, all the stupidity. Still my guy. Happy to see him get to stick around in New Orleans, a good organization. We'll see what they're like without Sean Payton, with Dennis Allen at the helm, but they have added some weapons. They drafted Chris Olave out of Ohio State this year. Michael Thomas should be back. They have Alvin Kamara still, and they also brought back Jarvis Landry, a former LSU product, similarly to how they brought back Tyrann Mathieu on the defensive side. And I just like the room. I like the group that they're putting around Jameis Winston, and he sounded extremely happy to be back. Remember, he missed most of last year with an ACL injury, and was speaking with reporters and talking about just what it was like being in the game and what it's like coming back. And it's just this is pure. It's a little bit creepy. We'll talk about why. You'll notice why right off the bat, but it's if you just listen to it, it's good stuff.
As a kid, my passion was always football, right? But being taken away from the game, I didn't realize that my passion was playing football.
So it seems simple enough, and this is a good candidate for what you say now, but it's definitely something I can understand. You don't just enjoy the game; you enjoy playing the game. He doesn't want to just be around it; he wants to be a part of it, and the injury took him away from that, and the look part of it, the looking over the sky was the creepy part, but it's a very, very serious understanding of that. Like, hey, you don't appreciate something until it's taken away from you, and hopefully this leads to a very productive season for Winston and the Saints, unless they come across the Bears' path, in which case they need to be awful. Pure and simple. But that's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com. Email address is clockersports@gmail.com. And, of course, follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at 30spod. That's the number 30 and pod. And, of course, read the stuff. Last Word on Pro Football, Soaring Down South, and Heavy.com. Until the very next time, you already know what it is, man. I am gone.
I've been having a dime piece on my side.